Hello, I'm Dr. Sian, Senior Health Psychologist, and today this video is on emotions. What are they and why do we have them? So I'm going to answer that question shortly, but first off I want to give you guys a bit of a moment to think about what do you think emotions are and why do we have them. So you can just think or write it down and compare it to what I say later on. I'm also interested for you to have a little think about some of the messages that you might receive from your family, from other people around when you have emotions. Like, what do people say to you? It's quite common for people to say things, and their intentions are good. To say, don't worry, or don't think about it. It'll be all right, or you just got to think positive. Don't cry. Things like that. So there's a lot of these kind of messages that we receive and even give to other people that they shouldn't be emotional. And more particularly that you shouldn't be sad or angry or really show any of those kind of negative emotions, and that what you really need to be doing is being happy and having positive emotions for you to really kind of succeed at life. So it's interesting to note what some of those messages are. So I hope now you've had a bit of a time to think about emotions. What are they? Why do we have them? Because I'm going to answer that question, but I just want to do one little activity and see what comes out when we do this. So I'm just going to write up 9 basic human emotions. So I'm going to read each one out loud, and without you thinking too much, I want you to have a bit of a think about, is it a good or bad emotion? So I'm trying to kind of access some of the judgments that we have. So, joy, good or bad? So I'm going to reply most of the common answers that I get, but I still want you to think about it as we go along. So I tend to get good for joy. Love, good or bad? Good. Curiosity, think a bit more, but yeah, mostly people will be like, oh, that's good. Fear, is that good or bad? Most of the time, I'm going to reply, it's bad. Anger, bad too. Sad, bit more of a thought, but again, most people will be saying bad. Shock, don't know, but it feels bad. Guilt, lots of people like to say that's very bad. And disgust. So when I do this exercise, this is the main answers that I get. Now, there's no right or wrong. I'm going to explain what I'm meaning by this exercise shortly. But in general, people are going to say these are good and these ones are bad. Now, when we buy into this notion that there's good or bad, it actually tends to lead a lot of us into engaging in control strategies. Alright, so we believe in this. What we want to be doing, or what we think is the right thing to do, is that we need to get rid of, suppress, avoid our bad emotions to try and make good ones. Or maybe not even that, sometimes just to not feel. So humans have created many ways to try and control their emotions, and that could be using food, sleeping too much or too little, drugs, alcohol, gambling, shopping, avoidance of the activity, of the event, of the stressor, the person. So humans do a lot of that. Now, I must say, in moderation, control is okay. It is okay to have a day where you just can't face things and you need to pull the doona over and have a pajama day. It's just that if we use control strategies excessively, it leads to costs. There will be a cost associated with it. So if we always were having pajama days, well, that would have a huge cost. We're not living life. We're not doing things. We're not achieving things. We're not going to work. We're not working on our relationships. So there would be a massive amount of costs, such as friends, work, money, and health, and mental health as well. And this is what happens with all of these costs. So while we're trying to avoid and reduce these bad emotions, it can lead to more anyway. So they can work against us. Using alcohol to get rid of bad emotions and try and feel good. You can easily think of some of the costs associated with that. Addiction, relationship problems, and even more mood problems. So one thing is, I don't think it's helpful to be judging emotions as good or bad. Right? What's really going on is pleasant and unpleasant. So, the thing is, we actually need our emotions. All of them are important. And you might start to realise this when you're thinking about some of the bad ones, that like, oh no, that's important. We need fear. Yes, it's unpleasant, but could you imagine what would happen if you didn't have fear? When people don't have fear, they tend to put their lives at danger. Anger's there to protect us as well. The emotion is there to show us what we might need to do. Now that's very different, to acting aggressively. But the emotion anger can definitely serve its purpose, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail later. Sadness, again, unpleasant, but sadness is caring. You don't feel sad about things that you don't care about. If I told you I broke a coat hanger this morning, you wouldn't be sad about it because it's nothing that you would really care about. But if a family member was dying from cancer, or you suffered a significant loss that you really care about, you would be sad. So if I could take away somebody's capacity to feel sadness, I would also be taking away their capacity to care. Shock, again, that's it. You think about, that's what you need when you're in danger. Survival, it's what helps you do what you need to do. Disgust stops you from living in filthy situations, hanging around with filthy people. And guilt, again, sometimes people want to give that a double cross because it feels so bad. And yes, it does feel really bad. And I think that's because it is a very important emotion. Can you imagine what would happen if none of us felt guilt? It's a social emotion. It's telling us to do the right thing. And I think it's what really holds society together. So I'm trying to say all emotions are important. So I'll get you to think about that while I rub the board out and get ready to answer that question. What are emotions and why do we have them? Even the word actually gives it away a little bit when you think about it. emotion. It actually means I move, right, in Latin. I motion, I move. Motivation. The word motivation comes from the same meaning as well. So emotions are telling us to move. Towards what? That's really the question, isn't it? So I move towards meeting my needs. Remember they were talking about how important they were? They're so important, and it's about meeting your needs. So what are our needs? So a while back, Maslow, a psychologist, realised that we've got a hierarchy of fundamental human needs that we have for survival. So again, fear, anger, shock, love, joy, they're all survival, they're for our survival. So like all good pyramids, we've got to start at the bottom. So we have physiological needs: food, water, warmth, air, to survive, right? Basic needs. So if you're stuck in the middle of the outback with no food or water, you can imagine that you would be having an unpleasant emotion, right? So it's telling you you've got to do something. So a lot of our unpleasant emotions are unpleasant for that reason, to get our attention. It's just like a fire alarm, right? Fire alarms sound so unpleasant to get your attention, so not to ignore them. Like, so you can leave the house or put the fire out. So that's the same thing with our unpleasant emotions. They're getting our attention and telling us that we need to do something. So in the outback, you need to go and get help or try and be found. So that's what that fear and anxiety is motivating you to do. So currently we're pretty lucky with our access to food and water and shelter and warmth at this stage. So the next level is safety. So this isn't just safety about walking around the community or in your house, but it's also safety about your health and your body. So as a health psychologist, this is when I start to see the fire alarm go off. So the unpleasant emotions of anxiety, fear, shock, things like that can be coming up because people are not feeling safe with their health. So what we need to do is we need to develop an action plan to try and feel more safe. So this isn't about positive thinking or magic pixie dust. I realise that we don't have that, but it's more about, well, what can we do to feel a bit more safe? So we might not have the cure for cancer, but we do have an action plan to feel more safe. You go to your medical appointments, you exercise, eat well, have a sleep routine, see a health psychologist. Those are all things that you are doing to try and feel safe in your health, to look after yourself. And that's what your body, your brain's trying to tell you. So after the next level after safety is love and belonging. So we're social creatures, we need each other. If our needs of love and belonging are not being met, we tend to feel sad, lonely. So we need to do action plans around, meeting those needs too. One thing I do want to highlight, that because this is a hierarchy, this is a pyramid, that it's important to note that when the needs down here are not being met, it does affect the next level. This is why so many of my clients start to notice differences in their relationships. They have less ability to be putting as much effort into their relationships because they're just not feeling safe. So So we need to understand that. That's part of it. And when we're feeling more safe, then we'll have more ability to start focusing on our relationships. Like, we still need them. That doesn't go away. It's just that we might not be able to be working on them the same level as we were before our health diagnosis. The next level after that is esteem. Right? So these top ones, esteem and love, these are our psychological needs, and safety and physiological are our basic needs. So esteem is more about, our psychological internal well-being, about how we feel about ourselves, how we think about ourselves, respect and trust and self-esteem and things like that. So again, if it's wonky down here, that's going to affect that. And also if our relationship needs are not being met, it will affect how we think about ourselves as well. We can still action plan them, but again, we have to start down here until we can start to work up. Now the top level is self-actualization. So that's really high level, and that's a lot about morality and creativity and philosophical kind of pursuits. And so again, if we're down here, it's going to be a bit hard to be working up on these levels at the moment. And again, I think it shows you, we're living through COVID at the moment, and so a lot of our basic needs are not being met, which is why it's going to be difficult to do things such as learn an instrument or a new language, because we've got to be focusing on these needs before we can work up. And as you're probably aware, these needs are an ongoing thing that we need to do. But what we do need to understand that when we have an emotion, it is about our needs not being met. And so our steps are name, right? So number one, name the emotion that you feel. Anxiety, fear, sadness, anger, whatever it is that you name that emotion. So name. Number two, explain what need is not being met. And then number three, action plan. And that's what I want to talk about with emotions today. Now, I know this is a very basic overview and there's a lot more complexity behind that, but that's why seeing a psychologist for therapy is really important. Our thoughts can get in the way, our behaviours can get in the way, and that's why we need to look at those too. But I hope you've enjoyed this education about our emotions, and it helps you move in the step towards what you need to meet your needs and live by your values and have a meaningful life despite illness.